Talking about horses, bringing you closer to some of the best horsemen in the world for tips, insights, and stories. Listen at home, at work, in the car, or in the saddle. This is Talking About Horses. Here's your host, Patrick King.
All right, here we are. Hey there, gang. Patrick King here, and I want to thank you so much for tuning in for what is now episode number 36 of Talking About Horses. Today, I'm pleased to be joined once again by my friend, Miss Leslie Desmond. Leslie's joined me for a few episodes now, and if you want to revisit those, check them out on my website at pkhorsemanship.com. If memory serves me right, we'd be looking at episode number 26 and episode number 30. So Leslie, thank you so much for joining me again.
Oh, you're welcome. It's a pleasure.
Oh, thank you. It's always an absolute pleasure to have you on here. And as I said, we've had you on here several times. So for the, maybe 5 people in the world that are out there listening now that don't know who you are, can you give me or give our listeners rather, kind of a distilled 2-minute version? If I was stuck in an elevator with you and I said, well, who is this Leslie Desmond gal? what would be your bio? How would you describe yourself in the elevator?
If we were in an elevator stuck there, I would be probably pulling a wrench out of my purse, trying to take the roof off the elevator and get up in there and climb those things and get out.
Oh, well, if I'm ever stuck in an elevator, I want to be stuck there with you then.
Okay. No, I'm too claustrophobic to even entertain the notion. But I will try to give you a thumbnail bio. Let's see, 2 minutes isn't much time. I'm known for talking indefinitely.
I'll start the clock.
What I can say is that, I've been involved with horses my whole life, since the age of 4, and been very lucky to meet people who understood horses the way I could appreciate and understand most of the time. And that led me to the commitment very early that I would be really dedicated to serving the horse as long as I'm here. And I knew that at the age of 7. So that's the start of my bio. All the things I've done since then really are just the culmination of the things I've learned from making mistakes, to be honest, and paying attention to the right people when they showed up. I think I missed a few good ones for a variety of reasons. I had really tremendous opportunities to go in very decidedly competitive directions at a young age. I could have taken different opportunities to I was interested in jumping, and I was interested in horse care and hoof care when I was young. Those are 3 things I did a lot of: jumping and taking care of feet and taking care of animals, diets and grooming and building fence. I'm a good fence builder, and things like that. What's gonna really be best for the animal. That was always in my mind, actually. This is almost 2 minutes, right?
Oh, we can keep going.
Okay. Anyhow, somehow the years slip by, and the years slip by, don't they? So decades pass, and I really did like showing when I did it, and I was actually fairly good at it. I never minded making mistakes in public, never minded making mistakes anywhere, because I think the more mistakes you make and the more comfortable you can get making mistakes, the less likely you are to make the same one twice. So with that in mind, as I look back over, actually 60 years with horses, because I'm 64, I can say with sureness that I still feel like a beginner, and many times I'm working with a couple of horses now that are letting me know how much I don't know. And so really my biography would be about the importance that I've learned of being a continuing student. I don't think you ever arrive. Perhaps it's nice to have a goal in mind of some kind to organize your the time you spend or your fantasies, but really and truly, the horses present such an opportunity for you to grow and develop and to refine your presentation of tact. I mean, the one size does not fit all in the horse business. Each one is an individual, and you can look out at a field of 60 horses and say, oh, there's a bunch of 60 horses. You can do the same with a group of cows, but you spend time around these animals, you'll find out each is so different.
Yes, you can do the same with a group of people, yeah?
your listeners, of course, are I'm sure know this. I'm not,
Yes.
saying things. But what I learned along the way is that as I tried to shoehorn myself into various learning styles and programs and, following one person to learn this and that, what they knew, I found out that once that it was never enough. Absolutely never enough. You could find the best person for reining or cutting, and I did not pursue those particular disciplines. But if you were, for example, I did other things, but if you were to pursue, say, to go spend time around the top people in eventing or endurance or Grand Prix jumping, for example, and then you wanted to refine and perfect what they knew and apply it to every horse you come in contact with or come across, it's just, in the end, you can only do things your own way.
Yeah.
So that's my autobiography. How's that?
I think that sounds fantastic.
We can add some other things. I mean, I've not only worked with horses, but I learned how to write, and I learned how to get on airplanes and travel around. Those are very important skills.
Yes.
If you're involved in this line of work, learning how to pack efficiently or inefficiently, as the people who know me will surely attest. I have more suitcases than anyone on earth. Do you think I'm kidding?
No, I'm actually laughing because I think of my car. I don't believe in the times that we've had the opportunity to hang out together that you've seen how packed full my car is with things. I'm pretty sure that once I hit the road, everything I own is in my car.
I wish I could have such a big car.
Right?
No, I tell you, we shouldn't talk about possessions. I think de-accessioning would be the word of the day.
Yes.
I'm finding out now how enjoyable it is to get along with very little. There was certainly a time when it seemed that things I didn't need found their way to me, and plenty of them. But one of the things that found its way to me, which I didn't need, and found out the hard way I didn't need, was a lot of useless ideas about how to treat a horse. And believe me, I tried them all. I will say I'm open-minded. Maybe we could add that as an autobiographical aside. I have taken at face value virtually everything that anyone's ever told me to do, and I have fortunately lived to tell about it. The very worst episodes and the very worst advice I've also taken, and found out that where it may work for one person, I don't give up on one experiment either. If it doesn't work the first time, I'll try several things on several horses. I'll try it several ways, or I'll spend months thinking about it. And one of the things was the part about making life hard for a horse at the back of the trailer to make him get in and to make him seek refuge. And that was really impressed upon me for many, 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 many years. And I really never got over the fact that I tried so hard to make that work. I'm sure, I've seen people do it effectively many times, but I found it was very tough to try to teach this, because when you're trying to make a determined effort to make life hard for a horse, and that becomes the goal, so that he concludes that something else is nicer than what you're doing, it also quickly became clear to me that other people became more interesting to him too. And so I really very quickly started spending less time at that.
You just said something right there that I hate to interrupt you here, but you just said something that I found very, very meaningful. And that was that you're doing things and see, I'm going to mess it up already. The things you're doing, the horse finds other things more comforting, or however you just said that.
Well, okay, the idea was you make the right thing difficult,
yes,
the right thing easy, the wrong thing difficult. But if you're the one making the wrong thing difficult,
yes,
he associates you with that behavior, and
yes,
so you've lost your pal.
Yes, that's what just struck me right there. And as many times as we hear these things, these ideas, make the wrong thing difficult, the right thing easy. I think I was with Ray once, and he said, why don't you just make the right thing obvious? People are so damn good at making things difficult.
Well, that's good advice from Ray. I would have taken it myself. I took a lot of advice from Ray, and that and that among them. But you see, making the right thing obvious is the point.
Yes.
And because it takes a lot, and this is where Bill came in with his great observation. He said, there's no end to what you don't want. So why don't you show them what you do want?
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
If he keeps trying because you're not happy. In other words, if you set him up, if you're going at a horse, any type of horse training approach, and we are going to right now let's just cast the net wide. We're going to say, hopefully, I would be thrilled if there were people on here who rode reiners or cutters or Western, working ranch horses, or it doesn't, they could be with the Icelandic horses or out in the endurance world or in thoroughbred racing. It really doesn't matter. You could be running a little Amish buggy down the side of the road. The point is a horse, and anyone who's out there picking up 4 feet and feeding them and closing the gate behind them at night. We all have these horses, and we all have certain ideas that are probably, many of them overlap in the same, our conclusions about them and our expectations. So really, the discipline and all of the accoutrements, all of the snaz and jazz you have to bankroll and finance and acquire in order to participate in this way that we do, okay? None of that really matters, because in the end it's the horse.
Right.
But if you're really going at this in a way that the horse is going to be corrected as a way of finding out what you want, that means you're expecting to correct it. That means you're looking for what you don't want, ready and poised to correct it.
Mm-hmm. You
go at it, so in other words, really in his mind, the relationship becomes around waiting to be told that he's wrong. And if he's not sure what is right, because he hasn't been shown what's right, if he had been shown what's right, the correction wouldn't be coming. This is logical, yes?
Right, of course.
So you're going to correct the horse every time he does what you don't want. At some point, it should bother a thinking person enough to question whether or not they've taken the time to show him what they do want.
Yes.
Because if they have, then that correction can be taken off the list, and you can move on to something interesting, like advancing your horsemanship instead of correcting him every day for getting too close until he's 25.
Right.
And this is the thing that people, I think, really would benefit from making that, I hope, will benefit from closing the gap and this is not to in any way insinuate that people are not bright or not paying attention. It's just that we have our habits, we have our routines, the horses fit into our days, and pushing a horse back out of the way just becomes something we don't think about. It's just part of the relationship.
Yes.
He's too close, push him back. What about if he learned never to crowd you?
Right.
What about if you took care of that and you left that out? How many hours in the lifetime of a 20-year horse would you save for other things? Right? Because
Absolutely.
if he's being pushed back every time you're around him, at least once or twice, that means he's loading the forehand so that you have to push him back, which means he does it when your reins hit his shoulders too.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
So these are small things. Is this still part of my autobiography?
Oh no. Oh no. This is this is an extension. Part 2.
Okay. Okay, just checking. Anyway, I'm not sure what you wanted this evening was a monologue, but I just there are so many things that are fascinating when we start to really think about the inside of a horse's mind and what they're really set up to appreciate and to offer. And the main thing they're set up to offer is speed, which is, I find, what most people like the idea of and love pictures of, but don't necessarily want to experience firsthand on their back on the first ride.
Right.
And this is where another, kudos to Ray Hunt. If you weren't ready to gallop, he'd get you ready to gallop. I mean,
yep.
that was one of the great things about the way his colt starting worked. And I know probably a lot of people wish they'd been able to ride with him, and I know quite a few who have. And one of the things that's really important to remember is that it is the need and it is the biologic imperative of a horse to run.
Yes. For
many, many reasons. For fun, for exercise, because it's cold, because he has a place to go, because he's frightened, because he's curious, because he's protective, because he's keyed up, because something hurts. They run for all kinds of reasons.
Yes.
So when we're up there and we don't feel comfortable about them running, we have to start to look at what sorts of corrections and what sorts of presentations we make that will not backfire on us later, so that he understands how to slow the feet down without us paying a price later, because the investment in that momentary slowing agenda and need and action on his body parts doesn't start to put the wrong kind of money in the bank.
Yes, absolutely. And then, you know, I find also the horse can sometimes, I don't want to say turn off, because that's probably not the right way to say it. But if he starts to express himself and he gets fast, he gets speedy, and we just shut him down without recognition of that, they start to change how they present themselves to us.
Yes.
Do you find that as well?
Yeah. Yes, I do. Mm-hmm. Yes, I find it, and yes, I maybe don't want to be up there.
Right. Right.
I mean, well, what I think what you're talking about is when they start to resist, an effort to either slow down or turn, and that can be one and the same. Versus just going flat out in one direction, is either going to know something about turning or running into something, or about slowing down with two reins or with your seat. But the pieces that go into that, the part that the effort and the investment that goes into training, the planning, the training of getting a horse ready to read you before something hurts. That's an important thing to think about, so that you don't have to just go to something that would be considered an e-brake in order to go from a gallop to a trot. Most people just stick their feet on a dashboard, haul back with two reins, and there's a lot of, there's a fear quotient in there, which is something to talk about, because really, in the end, Patrick, you have to have a good seat if you're going to ride a fast horse.
Yes.
Or? I think so, right?
I think so. I would sure think so. Or you'd at least hope so.
So, does anyone have any questions?
We've got a couple that are coming in, and actually one of my questions that's popping up, and of course I'm going to be selfish and I'm going to throw mine in there because I can, because I run this show.
Yes, you do.
One of my questions that's coming up, and I think it's going to be valuable for everyone here, hopefully, because that's why we do these discussions. We talk about preparing the horse so that he understands not to, we'll go back to the analogy of the horse crowding, right? Rather than correcting the horse for crowding all of those times, we set the horse up so that they understand where they need to be, so they never feel the need to crowd. And there's a million different scenarios where we can prepare the horse to understand what they need to do so that they can kind of honor their responsibilities in this partnership, and we honor our responsibilities in this partnership, so that we don't have to turn to those corrections and the overcorrections and the constant nagging that we all see happen so many times. But how do we do that?
How do we set up the horse not to understand that he shouldn't crowd, you mean?
Yeah, let's go with that one, because I know everything else is going to be, an answer specific to its cause or its desire. But so with the idea of the crowding, how would we set a horse up to not be crowding with us?
The way I do it might be different than the way some do, but the way I do it is I've paid a lot of attention to the way mares get a foal to obey her. And pretty much after the first few days, the foal understands pretty much how to mind his mother or her mother. And I've looked at the way the contact with the mare and foal takes place, let's just say after the baby's dried off, and assuming it can get up and stand and it's got a normal, healthy start. Generally, the mare is in high gear trying to keep up with that thing because it just takes off. And so, assuming it has enough room to move, the mare is going to be busy getting with the feel of that colt. So that colt fires off at a gallop, goes to the mother until she can get up around it and start to head it back to wherever she feels it's better territory, whether it's away from other horses or away from a fence or a road or a hole or whatever. But the thing is, she's organized toward the back end of the foal, always. When it's nursing, she's got her mouth or her, her muzzle on its tail and on its rump, both sides. She'll show the foal and feel of the foal on both sides of the tail all the way up to the mid-back sometimes. So she's constantly got her mouth on that baby from behind when she's following it and when she is, when it's nursing. So from that standpoint, the foal is already learning to understand, feel on the left and right side of its body, and also when she's following it, I've noticed that many mares will they'll drive the horse, they'll shape their foal turns by getting to the outside and pushing on an outside eye or getting on the inside and drawing until that baby learns to follow. So if you just look at that, you can do the same, which is that you, maybe as much as we would love to, have our hands all over the face, maybe the first couple of years, 3 years of a horse's life, maybe you could just start to operate a little less, with a little less need for human type of affection and human type of exchange. We love our dogs and our friends and our children and our sweethearts and all the rest, and we go face to face with those experiences, right? Nose to nose, eye to eye, mouth to mouth, right?
Right,
That's how we do it, and that's how we do with our children and so on, our friends, our family, everything. So the horses really don't work that way. And so how the mother gets that speedy foal, whatever he weighs, a couple 100 pounds, jetting off into the beyond, how does she turn that foal and get him to come back? She gets behind him where he can see her and either draws on one eye or puts pressure on one eye. So if she wants him to turn right, she's going to accelerate on the left side and drive him to the right. And then when he starts to yield, she'll flip her neck over the back of his rump, whether she's, right on him or 20 feet back. That'll draw. So she'll bring that eye, because right in that spot where her head and neck come over the back of that foal, whether he's right underneath her, and they're galloping, or whether he's back and at a distance, he will follow her once he picks her up out of that inside eye on a turn. And that's how they teach them to follow. And so I think if you really want to understand, the beauty, there's really something very beautiful watching a herd interact, if you have the time, or watching a Maryland foal that have enough room to move. We're not talking about these stalled arrangements where they're just sort of kept like, I don't know what, display pieces or something, but where they really have an operation, the capacity to develop naturally the way nature intended. You really start to learn that the mare's got it, she's got it figured out. So what I do, and I've really had this very much in mind since the end of the 90s when I started working with Bill in 95, seriously on the book that we wrote together, then he was very clear about me giving up quite a few things that I had learned previously if I wanted to learn how to operate through feel, or as he would call, your better feel. And what I did at the time when I met Bill, I was apt to crowd a horse. I was apt to love on them and get right up in their face and stand next to them, blocking their eye with my elbow at the mouth or the bit. The whole 50% of the horse's vision was taken up with the side of my face, my hat, my shoulder. And I didn't give any thought to it. I mean, I thought I understood horses, and that is not so long ago. I mean, I already had a long career with horses and thought I was doing fine. Not that there wasn't something to learn, but I had no idea that I mean, how would you like at a dinner party, someone comes up and sticks their hand over your one eye and shakes your other hand?
Right.
I mean, hello.
Right. Rather imposing.
It's extremely presumptuous. And especially when you're starting to think about holding a flight animal into the pressure of punishment or into the pressure of your need for affection and for demonstrative feedback, social feedback. My horse loves me. Let me take a picture with my new shampoo, my new cologne, my new lipstick, my new hair, my new everything, my new smells, 20 new smells every month. These horses have a hard time adjusting to that. They want a human smell, a natural smell, and you can bottle yourself up any way you want. But I'm just saying, it doesn't get the horse any closer to you. Because really, they are driven on the senses: smell, sight, sound, feel.
Right.
I suppose taste, but I mean, we're not really getting in that area.
Right. Mother Nature made all of those others a priority, for sure.
So the sound, the horses are one of the things that happens with smell, as with people too, because smell is a very emotional thing, right? You can be cold if you're just relying on vision. You can stay detached. You can stay analytic. You can stay
Yes.
in a certain part of your mind. But the minute you start to think about smell, you think about taste. You think about taste and smell, you think about emotion. You think about the way people load their horses up with emotion, but they're just looking and touching, and they're not really giving any thought to the fact that you have on maybe cologne, deodorant, lipstick, mouthwash, toothpaste, and hair stuff, shampoo or hair conditioner, whatever else.
Mm-hmm.
What is this horse to do? You're standing in his nose with all that stuff, and you just had a cheeseburger. I mean,
Right.
I'm sorry, but
Right.
you know, people don't have any idea how this causes a horse to block you out. It's just like being next to somebody on a bus who doesn't smell very nice, or you're in public and somebody, whatever it is, becomes ill or takes their shoes off or isn't a very clean person. This is definitely not appreciated. Doesn't mean you're going to erupt or that the whole world is going to come to an end. But we all, and animals too, are highly, highly sensitive to smell. And people forget that horses are. You hear people say in the training circles, "Oh, he's so emotional." And he's really an emotional horse. He's got issues. And I'm not saying that it's just because he deals with 17 different people in a week, all of whom use different commercial smell products. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that the world a horse is in now, the life we give him, the domestic life we provide, he has no say about it, and he responds the way he does. But the way that he is misunderstood has a lot to do with the choices that we are not aware, that we make, that we are not aware of the effect it has on a horse.
Right.
That's a lot to try to jam into a sentence, but that's really what I truly mean. So how would I try to get the horse not to crowd me? I guess I'd load myself up with all that stuff I just said not to do.
So we want to avoid you. And now we have a horse that's hard to catch, right?
Right now you got a horse you can't lead, catch, or tie, and he bucks you off at the top. Have to carry all that pomade.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, I'm teasing you now. I'll get, oh my goodness. Okay, I'm going to get down to it though. Really what you want to avoid is you want to avoid bringing the horse up into you for treats and love and affection and then punish him for being there. The real fact of the matter is, don't teach him that you'll get an apple by coming up and eliminating all the space between us. Good boy, I love you, kissy, kissy, and then pop in the nose 5 minutes later because you suddenly realize he's standing on the back of your boot. You see, this is the piece to leave out. If you really want to treat your horse, and believe it or not, I do occasionally buy a carrot or an apple or borrow one for certain horses here and there.
Mm-hmm.
Roll it out on the ground, it tastes the same. Put it in a bucket, it tastes the same.
Right.
These hand-fed treats and these sort of ooey-gooey little love-saturated media pictures with horses and people blocking and crowding each other, you can be sure, I think, that the hand that feeds a horse also hits a horse. Right?
That's a very interesting perspective. Yeah, it's very common to see that. Absolutely.
And the people who are doing that don't think about it. And
Right.
They also don't hate the horse. They love the horse. But, there's lots of evidence of this with people who do this with dogs and children and things too.
Mm-hmm.
It's just part of setting the horse up to fail so that your corrections have a place to go. And most people, I think, do it because it was done to them. It's normal to correct because you were corrected without thinking about how do I get to the goal. Does my goal include correcting my horse every day for crowding? What a waste of time.
Right.
Really? I mean, you're 50 years old. You've got a horse since you're 30, and for 20 years he's been crowding you.
Right.
And you never questioned it. Are you really? So let's question it. Is it too late? No, it is not. That's the good news. No, it is not.
Right.
What we must remember is that when we're using feel and when we're presenting a feel the horse can understand, there's really not a whole lot of dust boiling around out of the corrals of the arena. There's not a lot of sweat and grit and grime. There's not a lot of the things that we classically associate nowadays, unfortunately, with horse training, natural horse training, get in a round pen, get him soaking wet, bang those knees and fetlocks and shoulders against that pen until he's exhausted, wind him up, show him who's boss. I mean, this is not everybody, for sure, but it's so common that it's easy to talk about it. And I'm not singling anybody out because it's so common. You can find it in every town in America.
Right.
You get a 45-foot pen, you watch a couple of videos, you go and get something to chase him with. I mean, you chase a flight animal up against a solid wall, of course he'll run.
Right,
I
exactly.
mean, of course he'll run. But do you see, this is the separation that I want people to think about, the separation between what you see and what you decide to do. Why would that horse want to be with you if he had the choice not to be? When you put him in a 40-foot pen and chase him with a whip around a pen until he's banging off the walls. Why would he want to be with you when you run up to him? When you want to catch him in the field where he can run, 20 acres. Why would he want to be with you when you do that? Is that your better feel, or is that just something you saw on TV?
Right.
Do you not question what you see? Do you not wonder why your horse would rather go to somebody else? These are things that really require a person to have a chat with themselves.
No, I don't think so at all. I don't think so at all. I think that's the reality of the idea. We have so many times, I see it, you see it, we all see it. We have so many times that, people are offering something to a horse, good, bad, or ugly, good, bad, or indifferent even. And, when you question them, why are you doing it this way? Even if not in an accusing way, it's just because somebody else did it, or because somebody said to do that, or very infrequently do I find the answer to be because this is what I found my horse appreciates the most.
Correct. There is a whole group of people who say, I learned it from the horse. People from now, from before, from whenever, from the future. If you learned it from the horse, then why didn't you pay attention to the feel he was showing you?
Right.
I mean, really, if you want to learn it from the horse, you're going to learn feel, and you're going to learn feel and release. If you're going to learn it from another person, you're likely to learn a lot about pressure and release. And that does not mean it's wrong. But people have asked me, well, who taught you this? When did you learn? To be honest, I learned about feel and release as a kid. And only when I started taking formal lessons did I, brokenheartedly, to be honest with you, abandon the relationship and the standards that I had, which is that I wanted a horse to want to be with me. And when I took up a whip and a set of spurs and I started competing, and then later started training and started doing this and that, and started having to do battle and tackle I had a set of problems I never dreamed of as a child. I mean, I was riding horses at 10 and 11, 12, 13 years old that I was actually, because I had to actually renounce my values, to be honest with you. I didn't have anyone showing me what to do when I was a kid, not until I was about 14, 13. When I moved to St. Louis, there started to be some instruction and some goals and some shows and different things I had fun doing. It was a lot of fun, but I had to basically give up the relationship that I had learned how to have. And by the time I was 18 or 19, I wouldn't dream of getting on horses that I was working on when I was 10, 11, 12, and 13. That's the truth. I had lost the connection to the feet and to the mind and the heart of those animals because I was actually interested in running blue ribbons. And because I had grown up the way I did, I could ride well enough. I won a lot of those things. That's a true story. I mean, those things they're fun. Nice to win a blue ribbon. Nice to have people say, wow, nice ride. That's great. That does feel good.
Sure.
But the thing is, it was an empty win. I didn't know it at the time, but really in the end, those were empty wins because the horse just did what I made him do. There were a few that I just rode because they were point and shoot runaways. I could direct a horse over just about anything, and I wasn't afraid to jump it either. But the point is, at the end, it was all an exercise in self-delusion because the horse did it because he had to.
Yeah.
I had learned how to make him do it. And I see it in lots of other disciplines too. I see it in the with the workhorses when they have the pulling contests and the racing and the endurance. I mean, when you're putting your agenda out there and that horse is part of the picture, it's not because he knocked on your door and said, "Hey, could you find a job for me? I'd really like to make you famous. I'd really like to put you at the top of your heap. Why don't you let me, make your day? Tell me what I have to do to make you feel good." Horses aren't going around looking for people to push them into a position so that for the aggrandizement of the ego, that horse can stand in a box with swollen legs for a week.
Right.
Or have regular injections and saddles that don't fit. This is not the life the horses choose. This is the life that we choose for them. And many of us involved in this, and I say us because I did it too, many of us don't understand the error of our ways. We don't know the damage we do.
Right.
But the thing is, if we could just roll the clock back just a little teeny bit, and I'm not encouraging people here. I don't mean by talking this way to have people, stay up all night feeling terrible. That's not the point. The point is, if we just listen a little more to the horse and really notice the responses that they are trying to give us, and we notice what and the responses that they do give us. The hardest thing in the world that I've ever had to accept from a horse is having them receiving the look of absolute indifference. And they could give a damn if you live or die.
Right.
Walk out, you can be feeding, and they'd rather walk away and eat off another horse's pile just because of what you actually don't mean to them.
Yeah, that's pretty meaningful for sure. Yeah.
No kidding. That was a page turner in my life when I hit that point, but that's because I had started and I had learned how to use horses as a means to an end.
Yeah.
And I'm glad those years were not so many, and I'm glad that now in my life, I know quite a few people that are involved in that line of work where the horse is a means to an end. And I'm happy to say that a lot of people see the emptiness in it and are doing something about it, which makes, they're still in their career, they're still in their chosen sport, but they're realizing that they can still have the depth. They can have the depth of the connection and a powerfully important relationship with many horses that they ride, just by getting on the same page the horse lives on, which is that language of feel, which is that you add the ask. You put an ask in there instead of, if you don't do this, I'm going to do that. Get ready for your ass kicking.
Yeah.
You see, because that gets a horse to tighten every muscle he has.
Yes. And that's just simply the self-preservation, of course. Right.
The self-preservation, exactly.
So we talk about the feel. How would you describe feel? And I know we've talked about this in each of our discussions together, each of these broadcasts, but kind of the distilled version for the listeners that maybe haven't heard you talk about this. How would you describe feel? Because we talk about the feel and release versus pressure and release. Kind of give us just a brief definition here of feel.
Well, okay, feel in the context would start with your own ability to sense how the horse is feeling, sense what he's about to do. It involves, in other words, you're not going to present much of a feel if you can't read a horse.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it isn't like an element. The feel is not like a hydrogen atom or a molecule of, it's not like H2O. You can split that out and there are the components. Feel is, it's a very difficult thing to describe. Bill took 5 years to get his thoughts down on paper with my pen pushing the ideas along, inch by inch with an ink pen. He puts in his definition section at the end of his book, chapter 9, called Meanings. He has 6 different kinds of feel that he describes. So there is no distilled one word for it, but I could just say generally, you have things like direct feel, where you're putting a hand on the horse, or a whip, or a spur, or a leg, or you're pulling the rein. Those are examples of direct feel. Indirect feel has a large range of definitions, which could be anything from your body language, your line of sight, where you're looking, the emotions that you come into the horse's sphere of perception. You walk up to a horse with a happy attitude or a sad or depressed attitude. That's another kind of feel, which Bill would have called indirect feel. The other kinds of indirect feel is your arm movements. You have a supporting hand, a directing hand. You want to shush, kind of shush them out of a barn or push them off the end of a pasture, you're going to use indirect feel. You're not going to run up and push on each one, for example. So there are many different ways of looking at feel. He has also written about feeling of the horse, which really has to do with reading the horse. You feel of his motions, you feel of emotions, you feel of his movements. You follow the feel of a horse. Let's say you're asking for a right turn, and he can't tell you how bad his left stifle's feeling. He's not going to make a big announcement. He'd love not to buck you off, but if you keep pushing for it, you're going to feel that core tightness go right down him, and the next move, you're going to be in the air. So you've got to feel. You could follow the feel that you want, which is to crank him to the right, make him do it, bury your spur in his side, and hope for the best. Or you could take his lead and follow his feel. To follow his feel would mean, Leslie, I can't make this. I cannot do this. The resistance you're getting is not because I don't like you, but I don't bend this way today.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean he doesn't want to. You might be bumping into a broken tooth. You might be dragging that bit across a wolf tooth. He might have, you don't know if he's got bleeding ulcers. You don't know if he's got no cartilage left on the top of his shoulder blades. I mean, there's so much that goes on for these animals they can't express. But if I get up against something where a horse is saying no, I'll generally say, okay, sorry I asked so hard. Let's see, what do we do now? You follow his feel to what he can do. That would be the definition of following a feel. Or you ask that horse to take his head up off grass, and he says no. So instead of teaching him that pull means go by yanking his face off grass and dragging him across the parking lot to the barn, you don't want to teach him that. Although many people invest heavily in this pastime after they're great, they're cooling off their horses, or they've given them a bath, they let them graze 5 minutes, and then they want to yank them around. Don't be surprised when you pull and they take off.
Right. And drag you along with them. Yeah.
Yeah. If pull means go on the ground, it isn't going to mean stop with your reins. So
right.
you got to darn sure want to put some thought into feeling of the horse in the moment, and have a clear idea that just because you have a bank account, an agenda, you've got support all around you for the dream, it doesn't mean the horse is part of it in a meaningful way for him. And that is hard news for a lot of people.
Yes. Well, there's a lot of self-reflection involved in that, and damn it, my horse should just do the right thing.
Pretty much. And people who are going to push that to a point, you'll see also they got dogs and kids and spouses that are kind of going along with the same marching band. It's not, generally this is not just isolated to the way people look back toward a horse. It's isolated to it often, not always, but it often extends just to the way they present themselves to anybody.
Yes, right,
Which is,
right.
it's my way at a highway. This is my life, my way, my deal. This is how we're doing it, and that's great. And there are a lot of wonderful people who decide to live that way, but that doesn't mean the horse understands it or can do it. You see what I mean?
Yes.
I mean, a horse can only do what he can do, and they have many ways of trying to show you, help you. And when you bring force, you bring pressure to the relationship. What it teaches is pressure. So if you want your horse to feel back to you, say, hey, where have you been? They hear your car, they're waiting at the fence instead of going the other way. They see your dog show up in the yard and they're waiting at the fence. They're calling out to you. How nice is that?
Yes.
That's a great feeling. But that's not going to be just because you load them up with carrots. Because eventually they get full,
Right.
They get full. So it isn't just about the treats. There has to be more, because if it's just about the treats, that same horse is getting an elbow in the nose or an elbow in the chest, or someone's kicking him on the pastern to get him back off of there, or taking a whip to the forelegs. This type of confusion that gets set in where love and food begins to create a discipline problem. I love my horse, therefore I feed him by hand. Okay, I feed him a carrot out of my mouth. I have a cute little picture on the piano of me. My arms are around him. He lifts me off the ground. You can play all the games you want. You can kiss him all you want. You can feed him a carrot from your mouth. You can do all these things, and it's great right until it isn't.
Right.
And the thing is, you've got a flight animal there, and he might go along with all these games and be just a blast to be around. Really fun to work with, really fun to ride, really fun to play with, really fun to have all these little affectionate ooey gooey games with, right until he's a horse and something scares him and he runs over the top of you with that, that's the end of it. These are the things that the more experience we have treating our horses like dogs and like family members in an inappropriate way for a 1,000-pound horse. Not saying they shouldn't be part of the family, because they are, and that's a nice thing. But you got to remember, and one of the great things Ray Hunt used to say, he said, before you get a horse, he would say this to a group, to an audience, just a general group of spectators. He'd say, if any of you are thinking about getting a horse, why don't you get a cow first? Go get a cow for a year. He said, then get yourself a horse. A cow will show you where to be. And he's right. The cow isn't going to stand you up in there, kissing all over him, rubbing his eyes and everything else. The cow will send you down the other end of the pen, right off the end of his horn or his head.
Right.
Because they need to see. So what it is about a horse that allows people to transgress them and allows people to take right until they're at the limit, and they have no more that they can give, even if it's not even a gift anymore. It's just, it gets taken from them.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
What I mean by taken is margins of dignity.
Yes.
We're not talking about anything other than just the horse kind of has to suck it up and put up with what's delivered or else. And that is something that comes very, very hard to people who grow up around horses. I think many people who grow up around them, at least the way I did, the horses were friends of mine. I wanted to get along. I wasn't doing battle until I was taught to do battle.
Right.
But you ask now, okay, what is feel? Well, there are several. I've been talking now 20 minutes answering it. Have I answered it? Probably not. You can say, I'm moving into the answer. It's a huge topic.
Mm-hmm.
It's like to someone who doesn't understand how horses actually work, but they've been professionals for 20 years. This is a very hard conversation to have. And I know people, many of them actually, who are successful. They are wealthy. They are widely respected. They have rooms full of ribbons. And they don't, in my opinion, really understand how the animal operates.
Right.
But the animal understands what they have to, but the animal has learned how to operate in order to get by.
Yeah, right. They've learned to do the task.
Right, and it's that aspect, it's that side of a horse's nature and character that makes it possible, in fact, to exploit them, so that you can set them up to fail, so that you can correct them day in and day out for things that they actually know how to do without being corrected. But if you are looking for the spot where your correction has a home, they won't let you down. They're going to do their part of that dance so that you can correct them. But it doesn't mean that they won't do it again. Because what is a real correction? Patrick, come on. A real correction is something that works.
Yeah, sure, of course. Otherwise, you're not actually making a correction. You're just kind of going into an argument or a discussion or a, yeah.
It's some kind of a requirement, a behavioral habit. Let's just take kids, okay? You're going to talk to your daughter, for example, every Saturday afternoon about not going into traffic without looking both ways? I don't think so.
Right.
Right? How many times you have to tell a child not to put a hairpin in the outlet, electrical outlet?
Right.
Right? Okay, this is a one-shot deal. We're talking life or death here. This is not something we're going to rehearse. We're not going to practice this and get a scolding later. There is no later.
Right, exactly.
So that's what I'm saying. These people who are making, and I say these people, everybody, all of us, you make corrections mindlessly. And you end up, because it doesn't lead to anything except having to do it again, you start to become dull to your own relationship. If you're correcting somebody again and again and again, the conclusion is obvious. You're either not effective, right?
Yeah.
Or you have another reason for doing it.
Yeah.
How many times are you going to tell your child not to play with fire? How many times do you have to give a 10-year-old boy a lesson about matches in the office, in the house, when you're not home? How many times do you have to have the talk about the stove, the matches, getting into dad's razor blades? You don't have that anymore, but when I was growing up, they had loose razor blades. Men shaved their face with those things that were dangerous as can be. All that stuff. So when a parent is making a serious correction about self-preservation, those corrections are heard and those corrections are made, or we wouldn't have so many people left, right?
Right, exactly. So being made, it should stick, or else it wasn't a legitimate correction.
Well, it was either ill-conceived or offered in an inappropriate way. But the point is, I mean, when it comes down to things like playing with fire, staircases, traffic, things like this, electrical outlets, those lessons are quite clear. When it comes to, I don't want my horse to crowd me, people don't really understand that the setup for the horse's need to crowd is part of their requirement for the relationship, which is show me that you love me my way. Come here, get close. Let me be close. Let's have that picture. Let me doodle around with your mouth. Let me pull on your lips. Let me kiss you here and there. All of this stuff that goes on. There is nothing wrong with this, Patrick, as long as you don't want a good riding horse. Because, you really, this is not for me to get up on my soapbox and tell people not to kiss their horses. This is ridiculous. How dare I? But when I see horses that are getting worked over because they have got the manners and the heaviness and the dullness and the rudeness of an untrained or a dulled out, resistant, piggy horse, it's really my obligation, if I care about the people and I care about the horses, well, I do care about the horses, but if I care about the person and I take them seriously wanting to learn, I have to say something about change your relationship on the ground. Don't beat him up for who he is on the back, because the horse you ride is the horse you lead.
Right.
And the horse you lead is the horse that you're dealing with every day. So if you don't want them to crowd and you want them to understand a meaningful feel, then you've got to set up what it is about that animal in your life that matters. Is it a safe ride? Is it a successful win at the show, whatever show it is? Or do you just want a great big old pet that you can love on and that's just going to follow you around and do what you say and kind of push and pull and tattle around with you? Those are not my decisions to make or to critique. But by golly, once you're up there without a helmet and you want me to help you get, Lucifer or whoever you've got there, Black Beauty, you want all these horses to fall into line behind your dreams without you making a change, it isn't going to happen.
Right. Well, I think the way that you just said that is really meaningful. You referred to it as a meaningful feel.
Yes.
And, it's interesting because today I was having this thought with myself today, and I would imagine you'll appreciate this. But, since I was a child, I was, raised to hold doors for people and things like that. And this morning on my way out of the hotel that I'm staying at right now, I held the door for someone who was walking in. I was walking out, they were walking in. I could see they were about 10 paces away. So I hung around and I held the door for them. But I was on the phone at the same time. And I could tell, and I didn't think about it at the moment, but I thought about it briefly afterwards, that the expression on their face was almost that they had inconvenienced me for me to hold the door for them simply because I was on the phone. And I didn't mean it that way. I never intended it that way. Of course, I was just being polite, but at the same time, I was on the phone. And a very similar thing happened to me this evening. I was setting up for this podcast. I needed something from my car, so I went out to do it. I was not on the phone. Someone was about the same distance, a couple coming into dinner. and I held the door for them, and completely different response from them. Now we could argue that it was because they were completely different people, but I was a lot more present. So there was a lot more of to them in the way that they received it. There was a lot more of an honest, meaningful, I would say a meaningful feel in that, versus when I was not completely present and I was on the phone this morning. Same action with the same intent on my part, but in one I wasn't completely present.
Right. No, I understand. And actually, now that you mention the phone, I have a rule for myself when I'm handling a horse, which is that I'm not on the phone.
Yes.
I'm not on the phone when I'm training them. I'm not, that phone is off. I've got undivided attention on that horse. The younger they are, the more attention they need, the more the more impressionable they are. I want to do you have, are people, does anyone have any questions? I was just going to talk about outside leg, inside rein.
There's quite a few that have come in, actually. Yeah, I think, and I want to be respectful of the time that we have. So we should probably get to a couple of these questions here, because as you can imagine, as we joked about beforehand, you and I could probably talk on a broadcast for days without stopping.
Yes.
I would hang a little intermission sign in front of the camera when I needed a restroom break or something, but otherwise. So actually, there's some fantastic questions that have come in, if you don't mind fielding them. So Susan asked a question: do you think that horses have learning disabilities, like some people are smarter than others?
I have noticed. Well, let me say the way that I notice it. It's very hard to assess whether an older horse or an already trained horse has a learning disability, because you just don't know what people have laid in there. You don't know what type of alertness, what type of life force. You don't know what type of training. I mean, you look at the menu of training options that's out there. It's hard to assess that fairly on a horse that's older, but on younger horses, I'd say there's definitely ranges of intelligence. I don't know about, I wouldn't know if I would call it disability, but let's just say I certainly have noticed that there are different aptitudes. You will find, if you take a young Arab, a young quarter horse, a young thoroughbred, a young Suffolk, and a young Icelandic, I know already from having worked with just countless numbers of all those types of horses that there are things I can expect from some more than others.
Sure.
And so is that a learning disability if you're trying to teach a draft horse to jump, or you're trying to get you're trying to get a thoroughbred to work cattle? I don't know. I think it would be more like inaptitudes. I wouldn't call it. Some people might not have the right job matched for the right horse and not know it and think that the horse was retarded.
Yes, the suitability.
There are absolutely skills that horses have. Definitely a predilection for one over the other. These a real instinct to do certain types of things. You look at these Hackney ponies, for example, and then you can look at some of these more man-made, manufactured type breeds that are just about, they're not that nice to deal with. Some of them are just kind of empty-headed. Like the more genetic engineering you get, sort of the stranger and farther away from a horse it gets.
Yeah.
I'll say one thing. Genetic manipulation of horses definitely does create a different mindset.
Sure.
That I've noticed. I wouldn't ever say that a horse had a learning disability, but I would say that there are noticeable, documentable, recordable, memorable differences between breeds and between horses that are kept in certain ways. You can certainly change their learning ability and their learning desire. You can change their appetite for life by how you keep them.
Yes.
Definitely.
Yes, absolutely. And I always tend to think of it, and I think we're on the same page, I tend to think of it as their learning ability, not them having a learning disability.
Yeah, there's a great range in that. And then it's more a matter of, I think that the single biggest impediment, the single biggest limiting factor to a horse's natural development of a horse's learning, skill achievement and learning structures is by being in too much confinement and too much lack of stimulation.
Yes, kind of the socially challenged horses. And
yeah, and certainly the foals that are raised by human beings
Mhm.
are some of the least desirable horses to be around
Yes.
as adults.
Absolutely.
Definitely the most dangerous, definitely the least horse-like.
I'm so glad to hear you say that, because I've said that so many times working with different rescues, and particularly I remember one particular situation where I was working with a rescue, doing a lot of training with them, and they had the nurse mare foals in. They had a large number of nurse mare foals in, and everybody wanted to love on them. Everybody wanted to have them lay on their laps and things like that. And we did a day of education, and the big day of education was simply watch them interact with each other and don't touch them. Notice how they actually interact with each other, rather than how the human taints that environment and that the expectation. The expectation. And that's so often, I think the case is people have this skewed version or vision of the social interaction that they have with one another.
One of the best things you can do if you're running an operation like that, and I've never really taken the time to seek these people out and talk to them, but the best thing you can do to get these horses into happy, healthy lives is get these foals drinking out of a bucket.
Yes.
You get them, don't bottle feed them. You
Yes.
get them, you give them 48 hours. You give them a bottle. You get the milk on your fingers. You do anything you can to get them sucking, and then you graft them right onto a bucket.
Yes.
The faster you can do that, the better the chance that horse has of having a good life.
Yes, absolutely. And thankfully, this group did end up doing that, and it made a big difference in the behavior of the foals and that sort of thing. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So Ashley has a question here that I'm very curious to hear your answer for, and it brings me to a question that I have also, just probably more one of semantics, actually. But Ashley says, I have a very headstrong paint that I ride Western dressage. With the work that we do, I usually have to make it seem like his idea to get him to do it correctly. In other words, moving forward, off the leg, give me a good working jog, etc. Otherwise, he will do it, but be reluctant and lazy. As I move into the harder movements, what tips do you have for working with one of these headstrong types? I sometimes feel like I'm mentally exhausted trying to work with him and not have him back down from the work on me. I reward him verbally with pats while I'm riding, and I do give him small breaks, so it's not always a go, 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 but being his breed, they're smart. I always feel like I'm trying to be smarter than him, which I'd like to think I am, but he's a smart cookie. So what do you feel about in this case, she's referring to him as headstrong, because it sounds to me like he's lacking the kind of effort that she wants him to put into his job.
It sounds like there's a lot of resistance to her.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess before I would say anything about anything, I would ask her when's the last time she took him out on a loose rein gallop.
Yes.
Can you ask her that? When's the last time she galloped that horse out and really let him run? And I mean really let him run. Is she listening?
I'm not sure if she's listening or not. I hope so. Ashley, if you were there, we want to know when was the last time that you took your horse out on a good gallop?
And there's a reason I'm asking. I'm sure that maybe it sounds to me like he's bored, to be honest with you.
Yes. I just typed in the question for her too. Hopefully Ashley is still listening. So while we wait for her to come in with that.
Well, if there's another question, I could ask that too, or I could just.
Oh, there's plenty more, but we can go on. Yeah, we can go on with this question. I would love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. Well, the first thing, even in just the way the question was stated, there's a lot of resistance. Basically, you start by labeling a horse headstrong.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that means that there's a tight rein, a lot of leg. If you're headstrong, I'd have to really in all fairness, I'd have to see the horse, right?
Yes.
But headstrong connotes resistance, stubbornness. I want this, you want that. I have to work harder to get this. It sounds as though there's a tremendous amount of two-way pressure. It's reciprocal pressure instead of release. I'd release him to go. If she's using a lot of leg, it means she's bringing the leg into his side, which means that he's basically bracing against her leg.
Exactly. By resisting, he's compressing his abdomen. He's probably locking in his back.
Right. So
Yes.
basically, he's tightening up in anticipation of having her kick him or squeeze him, and this is a perfect horse that could be released into any maneuver. That's what I would do. Instead of trying to analyze why he's that way, I would just say he doesn't appreciate the pressure. Quite clearly. I mean, that's why I say, you know, a lot of times it's really hard for people to understand. It's hard for people to understand what the horse's reality is like when you're sitting up there and you're leveraging your go with. I mean, it's not possible for me to imagine that this paint is being asked to go on a looser rein. My picture that I have from what these words say is that she's livening him up into collection. She's got him held, is what I'm feeling. It's what I'm seeing. Why else would he be headstrong? I mean, but this is where I'd need her to kind of feed back to me, because I don't want to make assumptions, and I don't want to mischaracterize her
Right.
circumstances by giving an answer that isn't really appropriate to her, to what she's experiencing. So
Right. So that's going to bring me to my little side question, and she is still here. She made mention that he's not necessarily on a tight rein, even in a loose rein. She feels that he's pretty hesitant to go. So I've asked the question again, what about the gallop? That brings me to my side question that I wanted to ask you about. I hear so many times from people, and I think it's just a passive acceptance of a term that's not fitting, about a horse being stubborn. And I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. I kind of have the belief that I don't believe a horse can be stubborn. I really don't believe any prey animal can carry that idea of being stubborn. But what are your thoughts on that?
Well, the horses that I've seen characterized that way have been simply misunderstood.
Yes.
There are examples of lack of cooperation between people where that could be said the same.
Yes.
And I have seen, when I remember as a child one time, this isn't really, I'll get right back to the horses in a minute, but I remember maybe I was under 10, and I watched a man who he was a custodian somewhere, and there were other people who apparently were in the same organization but over him, and he was getting what I considered a very hard time handed to him. I couldn't understand what any of it was about, but I just knew from the look on his face that he was misunderstood. Well, as it turned out, he didn't speak English. And he was perceived as being stubborn.
Gotcha.
and being I think in the end I heard that he was fired from his job for not cooperating. He did not understand what he was being told to do.
Wow.
And I think that happens with horses. I think that many of it, and it particularly happens when horses are not handled on both sides. We ride them on both sides, the arms and the legs on both sides. We want to go in two directions, but most of our work is done in our right hand on the left side of that horse, as the equipment is set up that way. And many of the books that you can buy and classes that you can take still tell you that you have to do this and that on the left side. But you're going to get up there and your body will be all draped over him on the right side. He can see your elbow, see your foot. He can see your arm, asking him to go out to the right. But you see, many of these things, because the horse is set up to see differently, he's set up to operate and feel differently. And until his point of view is fully appreciated and fully incorporated into your ability to show him what you want, he's only going to understand as much as he can. So when firmness begins to replace knowledge, I'm going to say this again, when violence and firmness starts to occur toward a horse, it's usually where knowledge ends. That's where frustration comes in.
Yes.
I'm going to hit him again, kick him again, pull him a little harder, try this, go to a different trainer. All of these things are the result of not understanding why the horse isn't doing what you want. You follow what I mean?
Yes, yes.
So the label of stubborn usually means resisting force, because you wouldn't
Yes.
come to the conclusion a horse was stubborn unless he didn't give a damn about your force.
Right.
So by the time you're already applying that force, you're already discounting his point of view. You're already not looking at your own contribution to the horse's problem in understanding how to do what you want. So I'm not saying that this is exactly the case for Ashley or that this is what's going on with her and her horse, but on a general level, and I couldn't tell you how many thousands of people I've worked with in horses as well, but what I conclude is that the minute you get over into labeling a horse as something other than wonderful, better think about it.
Yes.
You wouldn't want to talk too loudly about what you don't know. Because the minute you're calling a horse out for what he's not, it's more of a statement of what you aren't aware of. Do you see what I mean?
Yes, I do. I do. I like that way of saying it, yeah.
That's what I've concluded over the years. And some of the people that I admire the most and have worked with the longest are doing the best. And I've got some people that I work with that I have tremendous admiration for and who are really getting a lot done. If you are in the dressage or jumping community in Europe, you could take your troubles and your horses to Antonio Hidalgo if you wanted. He could shed some light on some things for you. He's in Barcelona. In Southern California, you could look up Lisa Popowich. And she's on, these people are on Facebook, and it's not, they're not setting the world on fire with great exhibitions and traipsing all over with, a marching band. They're just quietly getting their work done, and they're doing a really good job. And there are a lot of other people too. I mean, I'm getting slowly, I've been getting ready for years, but slowly I've been getting ready to make it possible and to make a I should say how do I say this, not a stage, but a venue, an online venue for people whose work I admire and whose efforts are really helping other people. Karen Musson from Ohio is another. She does work overseas as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think she works in, where do I want to say? She works in the UK sometimes and in Denmark. But I mean, it's not that these people who I've worked with and who I know and admire, it's not that they don't do what I do, but they do it their way. They pay attention to a lot of people. They've learned from a lot of people. I'm one of many. But this piece where Bill has mentioned that you want to pay attention, you want to observe, and you want to remember, and you want to put that timing and that feel. You want to adjust that until the horse recognizes what you want and what you mean by what you do. Most people, frankly, Patrick, don't have the time. They don't want to take the time to learn all this.
Right.
Most don't. But boy, the percentage that do and that actually end up with this being the feel that they have at the end of their lead rope, those are some of the happiest horse people I've ever run into.
Yes.
I mean, they are positively on fire with this.
Yes.
Because it's like having, you've ever watched the ice skating on the Olympics?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's nice. Right? That's a connection.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you want to ride your horse like those people skate? I do.
Right.
I'd want to. And usually what it looks like after somebody's best effort even gets pinned in a class, they still look like a couple drunks leaving a bar at 4 a.m. It's,
I'll drink to that one.
But the standard just gets lower and lower and lower.
Yeah, right.
Was that rude? Oh, that was rude.
I don't think it was rude. No, I don't think reality is rude. It's just real. Oh, that was out loud, wasn't it? Oh, damn.
Oh, you're funny.
Wait till I get to the bottom of this glass.
Yeah, you probably got a cork in it.
You know, I went downstairs and I got this glass of wine because you twisted my arm and made me do it, right? But I told the bartender, she gave me a generous pour, and I said, well, you know, I'd just buy the whole damn bottle off of you if it wasn't a video conference that I was doing and people would see me drinking from the bottle.
Oh, for heaven's sakes. Well, I must say, they must have given you half a quart in there. That was a very generous pour. It looks like a fishbowl on a stick.
I described it as a fishbowl, too. I told them if they had a 5-gallon bucket, I would take that as well.
Oh, Patrick, you're right.
Oh, my goodness.
So listen, I'm turning into a pumpkin right now. I'm a guest here, and we're going to have dinner, and
Perfect.
I wanted to find out, there are other, the one thing I guess I would like to talk about, if I could, I say I got to go on now. There's one more thing I would like to talk about. We talked about outside rein, inside leg on these horses and why it's just so predictably ineffective. And these horses, so many of them just get heavier and heavier and heavier. And the maneuvers, the procedures, the drill just gets less and less inspiring. The heavier the rein, the heavier the outside leg. You know, you ride from back to front, you ride from front to back. Somewhere in the middle, you're supposed to have a nice ride. Well, it's not so common to see that, is it?
Right, right. So now I know we chatted about that a little bit, the inside rein and outside leg idea. For our listeners, can you explain what you mean by that?
I would release the outside rein. Release the outside rein to the inside instead of pull the inside rein.
Okay.
And I would release the outside leg. Release the outside leg. The horse will take a shape better when you release the outside rein and outside leg.
Okay.
And just offer an opening rein and an opening toe so he can take the shape of the circle.
Okay. So we're talking in the situation of a circle in this case?
Well,
or are we talking in anything?
Could be a serpentine, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, when we're talking about, supporting the horse, people generally have been taught, set your inside leg at the girth, bring your outside leg back, right? Hold your horse on the circle.
Mm-hmm.
Bring your inside rein in, right?
Mm-hmm.
Keep contact with your outside rein. So what do those horses look like? Do they look alive? Do they look vibrant? Do they look resilient? Do they look happy? Do they look ready for the next maneuver? Rarely. It's a lot of work, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
A lot of work. And if you begin to experiment with releasing the outside rein down the shoulder groove, you'll have that inside rein reach toward your opening rein. It's not like you got to ride with floppy reins. We're not talking about that. It's just a matter of experimenting and starting to try on for size what really works and what really becomes beautiful.
Right.
I'll leave you with that. And why don't we pick up at the next possibility?
Yes, let's do that.
The next possible time. And I really want to thank Ashley for her question. I hope I was able to shed some kind of light on that. And if not, she's welcome to write to me on my Facebook. I can try to do better with an answer. But if you want, you can forward me those questions.
Perfect.
That came in, and maybe I can develop some answers for our next talk.
That's perfect.
Whatever that is.
That's perfect.
I'd love to contribute something if it's helpful. It would be great.
That sounds like a plan.
Thanks again.
Absolutely. Thank you, Leslie. I really, really appreciate it. I appreciate the time. And I've been taking notes as we've been going. I've got so many questions for our next broadcast, and I will make sure to notify our listeners when you and I get the opportunity to discuss and to set one of those up. I was actually just today going through my available dates for more broadcasts for the rest of the year before I head over to Europe for the winter. So that'll be perfect that we get a chance to do that. So thank you again. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
It's always a pleasure. It's really fun. Let's see what the future holds. Okay.
That's perfect. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you so much to the hosts there that are allowing me to take up your time. And I believe you said you've got a dinner to go to. So please enjoy that and tell everyone we said hello.
I will. It's a pleasure, and thank you, listeners.
Absolutely. Thank you so
Okay,
much.
we'll see you later.
You bet. Have a great evening.
Okay. Bye, Patrick. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
See you.
All right, gang. I want to thank you so much for tuning in for episode number 36 of Talking About Horses. I really appreciate you lending Leslie and I your ears. Please remember that if you've missed any of this, you can access the full broadcast through Facebook, through YouTube, iTunes, or by accessing accessing and streaming directly from my website by clicking on the Talking About Horses page in the Education drop-down menu. Through whatever platform you're listening, please be sure that you give us a rating, a review, comment, and maybe a share with your friends. Your word of mouth and support is absolutely the fuel for this fire. Thanks again, gang.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Talking About Horses with Patrick King. If you enjoyed today's show, please leave a review and subscribe. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit pkhorsemanship.com. We'll catch you next time.